You ready to run?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Thank you for joining me, Tom.
Wouldn't have it any other way. Thanks for having me.
This is cool, right? So you and I had met once before, did the podcast remotely. We were chatting. I said, hey, we're opening our studios and our offices. I'd love to have you out next time you're in the area. You said, let's do it. Fast forward a few months later. I think we were November. I think we were together.
That's about right. Yeah.
And here we are in July getting together. And you and I have spent some of the day together today before we even got into the studio.
Best pizza in New Jersey.
Talk about that a little bit. Give people a little insight in about New Jersey's food culture.
Well, credit cards aren't going to work. I'm going to tell them that right now. Yeah, great pizza. Great. A little unorthodox from, my taste, but man, spot on. So I'll be here for the company and the pizza again.
We call it bar pies, right? Super thin. They're killer. But, it was, you took a flight in. I said, hey, you needed some lunch. Let's grab a quick bite. We'll get to know each other a little bit more. And we had a great conversation. I mean, since I picked you up at the airport, we've been nothing but, conversing about different things. And a lot of it is really my inquisitive nature of trying to figure out who you are and what you do. And I mean that in the most endearing way, because you carry with you titles and you're in conversations that most aren't privy to, and you work for organizations that are making really impactful decisions based upon the American Fire Service. So, Tom, just a little background for those that are watching or listening. Give me a little bit of background about yourself, just to bring people up to speed, and then where you are today and what you're involved with.
Yeah, sure. No, I appreciate the introduction. I'm a career firefighter, probably all I ever wanted to be in my entire life. I still do that today. Because today I represent the fire service on this National Emergency Response Information System. I spent 15 years as a chief, spent a stint as the president and the chairman of the board for the International Association of Fire Chiefs, and have just been very fortunate to be, at the right place in the right time. And so that's allowed me to have an opportunity right now where, you think about it, you don't get very many stages in which you get to impact an entire country's, first line of defense. And so that's what we're doing right now. And that's pretty exciting. We're working on NERIS, the National Emergency Response Information System. I serve as the senior advisor to that program, which means that I try to be the connective tissue between some very intelligent individuals that are working to design this system, and it's alive right now. It's not a pipe dream, and we've got to connect it to the fire service, and that sounds easy. I think it's not easy.
Yeah, right.
Because of course we talked about this at lunch. It's like even just federally, there's a lot of fire related things, whether it's hazmat, EMS, the way in which the federal government participates in firefighting. We know that we have the National Fire Academy as part of the United States Fire Administration, but you look in wildfire, and the list goes on. And then you connect it to states, and states are different. Some states have a very robust state fire marshal. Some states participate in fire suppression, such as California, right. Oregon. Other states, it's a little bit more hands off. They push it more to the locals. There's not a right or wrong way to do it, but there are 50 ways to do it for sure. And then you have local fire departments, which if there's any enlightenment that I always enjoy, it's talking to guys and being able to appreciate how unique every little fire station, every little fire department is across the country. And so to glue all those things together, collect the information that we need to know at all layers of government, and do something with it that's meaningful, that's purposeful.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
But it's overwhelming. Right? So I was saying to you earlier, right? I picture the onion, right? And it's just peeling layer after layer after layer. And you were talking in one regard to just wildfire and like what that looks like and how many federal agencies there are and then what they do on the state and local levels. And it's like, how do we, and part of, I believe your mission, and correct me if I'm wrong, but a big part of this is trying to weed through the layers of that onion to start to standardize what we're doing in the fire service.
I think we can definitely do more of that. We can do what examples we have of standardization today. I think we can make it better. I think we can make it empirical. Here's the way I look at it, if it makes my mind, and maybe this even taglines into another conversation we had that was non-fire related, was, if you had a health issue, right? Somebody has a health issue and you just don't feel good. you have some complaints, you're able to describe some problems. You can talk about it all day long, kind of qualitatively, but you have to know some things about what's going on in your body to really diagnose how you're going to, handle it. You got to get some blood work. You might have to get some imagery. You might have to, just have some lab values that you didn't even know existed before you had the ailment. And it's with that information that you can begin to chart a path that's better for you in your life and heal and all those things. And I think that's maybe where we're at with the fire service, is that we know that the scope, the menu of offerings, what our firefighters every day solve for local communities, that's a pretty robust menu these days. And it's only going to grow because we're so trusted in our local communities. Probably the only government professionals that are still trusted without question, usually. And so we've got to know a little bit more about what's going on in our communities. We have to know more about what firefighters do too. This is not a job in which we can afford to lack data, and it's not a job, whether you're a career or volunteer, in which our leaders within the fire service can make decisions in a vacuum. Like, we have to afford them the ability to make the right decision, to be data informed, and we want to close that gap.
As we progress, right, in the fire service through innovation, you look at where we are today in the fire service, we are smarter than we've ever been before. But to an extent, that can sometimes go in the wrong direction for a blue-collar job. And so I think what's super important is that we find that balance, right? We have to find the balance between still a blue-collar job and yet understanding and respecting data and information to be able to use that when it trickles down to the blue-collarness of this job. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Well, and when I hear you say, and I've even used that term before, like, this is still a very rough and tough, dangerous, dirty gig. Probably always going to be.
Always will be.
And so in those respects, I think that's why data is even more important, because we're not talking about, having robots do this work. We're not talking about video games here. We're talking about, like, we do this wrong. Certainly there are civilians at risk, but there are human lives that are doing the job at risk too. And so for a lot of reasons, the blue collar nature of this job means that we've got to get it right. And the nature of the communities that we live and work and travel through today is, like, everything we do is data oriented. Everything. You can't, buying movie tickets today, booking a hotel room. But I think most firefighters, and I wouldn't expect most firefighters, riding backwards to maybe appreciate the data system that informs their chiefs and their communities about the fire problem in their community. Fire problem, all hazards of their community. But I think if they were to take a look at it, because everybody we're hiring today, they know technology. They use it all the time, right? They're sitting there in the station right now on it.
Yeah.
I think they would be flabbergasted at how rudimentary it is and how much time has passed since we've really done a fundamental strategic update on collecting data, knowing risk, even just baseline level performance assessment. And I think only a quick glimpse at the current system tells us how important, what we're currently working on will be.
I think we're at a really interesting time, and I think where this is coming in, what's it been, 40 years, I think, since like the last great data update?
Yeah, there different intervals for different things, but
sure.
Yeah, anywhere from almost 30 to, that's a fair,
right?
That's a fair number.
And when you look at that and you break that down, we as a job, the fire service, career, volunteer, backwoods, small town to the biggest urban setting, so much of this job is still rooted in the way we've always done it. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
No.
But I think what we have to do is put a value on where we are today in the world and look at societal impact and values, or look at your every single day and how technology has allowed us to progress Maybe we're regressing. I don't know, right? I guess that's another debate sometimes, right? Maybe too much information is too much. I don't know, right? I guess we'll figure that out 50 years from now, what the impact of all of this is, right?
Sure.
But what I'm getting at is you look at your every day in your life outside of the fire service, and it's full of innovation and technology driven, a technological focus. But then we have the fire service where we're struggling, or we don't have the tools or a uniformed sense of information that we can pull upon. This is long overdue, is it not?
Well, yes, it is long overdue. The old system that we've been using, NFRS, was not without some value, but it just grew archaic. It got too many cobwebs on it. And I think you look at the industry, right? You look at this job, and I think it should surprise no one that we get in this kind of weird data purgatory where we know we need change. Like, I think most firefighters know that we can be doing this better. We can have more information. There's more information at our fingertips when you go to look at real estate to buy than there is like, if it's 3 a.m. and the drop hits and the light comes on and you're going somewhere, you don't I mean, there's exceptions. There's a few departments maybe that have it just down perfect, but we're really not putting much information in the fingerprints of or the hands of firefighters. We can just do better. And I think it is rooted in the fact that here we have this business that we're in. Traditional firefighting has not changed, right? Our conventional mission is the same. We're still killing people in homes, 3,000 people a year, well over 90% of them usually in the dwelling that they choose to live in. And that's been the case since long before I was born or you were born. And we're still battling that. We're still battling. We're still handling and tackling our traditional mission. All the while, look at all the stuff that we've taken on. We've decided to staple EMS to the fire service. We're trying to integrate that in many communities to make it fundamentally part of the DNA of the fire department. And it doesn't stop there.
Yeah.
Like, it used to be, I remember being a chief and having a deputy chief come to me who had told me, like, Chief, I think we need to start buying ballistic gear for our guys. This is probably 16 years ago now. And I thought, that's crazy talk, right? Ballistic gear that's cop stuff. And now it's like, we don't have any really good information about how often we're on the heels of what happened in Idaho. What a horrible tragedy.
Yeah.
But how often do we have close calls related to violence against firefighters? And are we at a point in which the fundamental protective clothing issued to firefighters should include ballistic gear along with bunker gear and uniforms and badges or whatever? And we're only going to know that when we start looking at the data. And so that's the issue. Contemporary, traditional mission, emerging mission, they overlap. They're both relevant. And so we have to have a data system that tells the story about the spectrum of things that we're doing to make our communities better, safer, and that's what we're doing.
Well, if you look at, I think what's really, this is so multifaceted because I think about, obviously, right? But I think about, like, this information typically is for our command staffs, our commissioners, our administrators, people that are looking at funding or fighting for budgets or looking at equipment, things like that, right? I'm trying to figure out is how do we get the buy-in from the backstep firefighter, right? And you and I were talking about that a little bit. And I think that that's an important part of all of this is that this isn't, the collection of this data, right, through NERIS, which we'll get into the finite details of all that, right, in a few. But the whole idea of a broader collection of data that is more appealing to where we are today, it's because we can use it as a tool. We can use that to educate our politicians, our municipalities, our cities and villages as to why we need ballistic gear or this or that. We need all the ammo we can to support what we believe the narrative is. And sometimes we have the narrative wrong. Sometimes we think it's one way until you look at the numbers. A spreadsheet's a spreadsheet. You can play with numbers all you want, but at the end of the day, if it's fact-driven, here's your answer at the bottom line, right? And it's like, so is it more of an emotional conversation? Is it more of wants versus need? Can you justify it? Do you have the information at your fingertips? Can we, all those things. And so those are the beneficial things for command staffs, commissioners, administrators. why and how do we get the backstep firefighter? Why do they need to know the importance of this data collection? Because they're going to be the ones out there collecting the data. They're going to be the ones, chances are, at 2 o'clock in the morning, updating the NERIS report and putting in more information than they had to on the previous reports, right? So data collection requires good information in. We have to get buy-in at all levels, no?
No, 100%. Couple of things. One of the things that we've really tried to do and is fundamental to this program is to reduce the data entry burden on the firefighter.
Love it.
Now, I would acknowledge to anybody, especially backstep, rough and tough booter firefighters.
Booter firefighters.
Yeah, that's a.
Is that a term from where?
Oh yeah, it's a Phoenix term.
That's a Phoenix term.
Yeah, they call them booters.
I love that.
But if you were to listen to what we say about NERIS, one of the things that you will find is that we want to make it simultaneously easier, right? And we want to make it better. And that just means we have to walk a very, very fine line here, and be very deliberate with what we're asking. We don't want to ask things just because we think somebody will find value in them. We want to say, is there a reason here? Is there a purpose? And where firefighters don't have to enter information, we don't want them to have to do that. If we can automate it, if we can calculate it, if we can obtain it from another definitive data source, we want to take that opportunity. And so I think it's important for firefighters to know we're looking for ways to make it easier. And this is not going to be something we roll out and then leave untouched for years. We're already in the early stages of figuring out what the next version is going to look like. Now, you're 100% right. Like we target decision makers to ensure that adequate resources are available to local communities, and that those firefighters doing the work have enough of them, that they're well equipped, that they have the right trucks and the right stations and the right positions to do their job. Like that's pretty fundamental to what we're doing. That's a primary dividend. But firefighters have to recognize that their decision makers and those ranking chief officers above them, that's them having enough resources is fundamental. But really, it's a system like this that we want to find utility in those company officers. It's kind of like discipline. You always hear discipline. They always say you want to handle discipline at the lowest level in an organization. I think that's a test question, and I kind of look at it the same way with data. Like what we really want to do is, this is going to be important for the chiefs, no doubt about it, to use this data, to use the analytics provided in NERIS. But really the target is let's make this data useful for those firefighters, for those company officers to know, like, how, if I've got 24 hours on duty in this station, in this neighborhood of a city, where can I make a dent in, protecting human life, protecting property that has value, and making this community, a desirable place to live. And I think we can collect data points, we can layer in other data sources to allow analytics and tools for those company officers and firefighters to find value. But the first thing is we've got to teach them that it's valuable, right? It really starts as almost a cultural conversation as much as anything.
How software got you buried in tabs, logins, and paper sign-in sheets? You've got one system for training, another for reporting, something else for alerting, scheduling, inspections. You get the idea. That's why departments across the country are switching to Alpine Software's Red Alert, the tailor-made fire service software that brings everything together in one system with one bill and no more paperwork. Red Alert replaces your pile of platforms with a single, customizable solution that handles training, alerting, inspections, truck checks, percentage reports, award points, ISO prep, OSHA tracking, the list goes on, everything you do your way. No two Red Alert systems are the same. Alpine builds your software around the unique needs of your department. And when it's time to switch, Alpine will convert all your old data with no setup fees at zero risk. Their entire team is based in Rochester, New York, which means no support runaround. You can pick up the phone and speak to somebody who understands the fire service and gets your issues fixed. With over 30 years of trust and an average customer tenure of 19 years, Alpine's mission is to be the last software purchase your department ever makes. It's battle-tested, firefighter approved, and NERIS ready. So if you're ready to save time, reduce costs, and finally get control of your operations, visit alpinesoftware.com for a completely free consultation. That's alpinesoftware.com. Red Alert by Alpine Software. Built for the job, backed by firefighters.
Well, I love that, right? Because when I look at, with all the travel I do, the different conferences I go to, there are men and women in the fire service that are starving for information, right? The go-getters, the ones that really want to make an impact in their job, they want to be proactive and progressive, and they want to excel and be the best that they can be. And there's so much of that today, right? I think too often we focus on the negative and not the positive, but man, there is such a positive culture out there too. People that are into the job, and it's okay to be into the job. And what I love about that then is they're always starving for more information. You can use data collection on the most local level possible, just by looking at like turnout times or response areas, or and it goes down the line from there. But knowing that, hey, we could do better here. Here's something I noticed. This is a red flag. We can focus on this. This might be something that can make us better, make our services better, make you better, make me better. I think that that's the real important stuff. And I think when you have a fire service made up of a lot of people that are pushing themselves to be the best that they can be, they're hungry for information and knowledge. They want to. The younger generations today want information. They want to be better educated. They want to know what the expectations are. This is information that can certainly fuel all of that.
Oh, yeah. Well, ask anybody who's ran a fire academy in the last 10 years, right?
Right.
You're up there teaching, you're getting fact-checked in real time. Like, this is not an allergic group of firefighters to data and information.
Right.
I think that when I say we, I actually mean people like you and I, not other people. But it kind of this age range, though.
Yeah.
Like,
right.
Because I represent, and you represent, only because I know how old you are, how we were kind of that first generation who computers, that wasn't an alien thing. But it was to most of the people that were in the fire station that were older than us, for sure.
Absolutely.
Well, now the times have shifted. Everybody's on computers, and so I think what we have is an opportunity in front of us to almost, galvanize the job. If we can recognize that people like information, they like data.
Yeah.
They use it all the time to make decisions, and then what our task in front of us is, we have to begin to change the narrative and indoctrinate our firefighters, much like the healthcare community's already figured out, law enforcement has already figured out. We don't want to be so data-centric that we lose our ability to be good humans and good public servants. But we have to recognize that it's a fundamental part of our job. I used to see it as a fire chief. You're basically trained as a firefighter. I know I'm definitely simplifying this, but you're basically trained to do reporting, and it goes a little something like, just get it done.
Yeah.
Just get it done.
Get it out of the way.
Make it go away.
Yep, make it go away.
And I've said that in the largest of metros to the smallest of communities, and everybody just kind of goes, yeah, that's how we do it. But we ran the ambulance service in the department I used to chief at, and so we'd send a half dozen people to paramedic school every year that were firefighters who were indoctrinated to know, like, the job, if I have to do a report, it's just get it done. Try to make it right, but don't spend a lot of time on it. Nobody really cares, kind of attitude. And we'd send them to paramedic school, in which they became, over the course of about 18 to 24 months, like legit healthcare professionals.
Right.
And they did not tell them that about data and reporting their interactions with patients. They actually said precision, accuracy, timeliness. Those were pretty critical. And a lot of our firefighters struggled that had been on the job for any amount of time because they were shifting their framework. And so it's an indication to me that we just have a little bit of growing opportunity in the fire service. Data is a 4-letter word, but it's not a bad 4-letter word.
Doesn't have to be.
And it just can't be. I mean, like, I'm just at a point now where there are some things, if we were to take a sheet of paper and both of us scribble down the 10 most important things to any fire department, like, we probably come up with some of the same stuff, right?
Sure.
Like stations and bunker gear and fire trucks, data's got to be one of them. Like, we just have to look at it as we've got to do that part right. If we don't do that right, the people above us have no opportunity to ensure we have adequate resources. The way in which we provide the service at the company level as a firefighter may be off target, may be inaccurate, right? We have to know.
Yeah.
The idea of storytelling and emotional arguments and and that sort of thing being sufficient, not going to work anymore.
Well, you brought up a great point, and to take it even a step further, we talked about it at lunch a little bit, is take advantage of it up front. If data in the EMS field and in police, I mean, there's parts of the academy where they talk about the importance of report taking, information sharing, and all those things, how to write a report, what information is needed, and so on. If we implement this at the get, it's a younger generation coming into the job. They're familiar with technology. They're familiar with computers. They understand reporting. If we can teach them those skills in the upfront, it no longer becomes a burden, right? It's just part of the job that they've been taught to do, and they can do it well because we gave them the tools to do it well. Instead of coming into a firehouse being like, you're the young guy, get on the desk and fill out the report at the end of the call, and the older guys want nothing to do with it. There's no ownership in it. The data going in is not going to be reliable, good, solid data that we can use in the future. And so I think drawing that correlation is important. And I love where you had suggested maybe we should look at, our Proby classes, the introduction to the fire service. They don't know what they don't know. If they think that this is just the standard across the board, give it to them early on. There's a lot there.
I wish we would. I have told people, I think I've been to like 70 different, meetings, conferences, places in which there's gatherings of fire service folks in the last, 16 months. And one of the things I say is that we are like, you don't have to meet any of the folks, the technical folks behind the scenes at NERIS for very long. And like, we will succeed. We've already succeeded. Like, this is a program that's up and running under a time-sensitive calendar that most thought we could not reach. There's no doubt, like, we will put this in the win column. This will be a modernized, more robust, everything you want it to be data system that we will fix and improve and measure and improve and get better over time incrementally. Wonderful. All a waste, right? This is a waste of time if we don't change the culture of the fire service, and there's not a magic switch, right? You can't go to Emmitsburg, Maryland at the National Fire Academy and all of a sudden start clapping your hands and say, hey, we're going to care about data. Like, it starts with those company officers that are listening to you, like listening to your program, that are going to go, you know what, I realize that I need to put more emphasis on that with the folks that I have influence over, or the chief of a certain battalion in a certain big city, or a small town chief, that if one by one, station by station, department by department, and shift by shift, we go, I'm going to do better. I'm going to understand this system. I'm going to use the data, which is also important to make decisions. Then all of a sudden, this is a big aircraft carrier, right? And all of a sudden, we're course correcting, and we become a profession that elected officials will know and respect as always using good, reliable information with which to make requests and to assess problems, and we have to have that.
Yes, right? So then I look at it as like, okay, changing the culture. Now we change the culture, right? We do that one firehouse, one fire department, right, at a time, and we want people to take ownership of it and buy in, right? Then we have to look at the process itself. It's one thing to buy into it. It's another to make it your priority every single day to be sure that it's being done to the best of its abilities, right? And I often find that a lot of the administrative tasks in the fire service, there's more and more of them. You know what I mean? We're getting away from putting hose in the street every day and worrying more about check boxes and building inspections and fire smoke alarm detection programs and car seat programs, and the list goes on, right? We're service oriented. I get that, but we just keep adding more and more. And so the resentment always pushes back to the stuff that we don't like to do. Right. And so if we can change the culture, and I hope we do, I do believe there's a place for this. I think the importance of buy-in and understanding what the data can do for us as a job altogether. But we have to be able to then implement it and allow for it to be of ease, not to make it another burden, right?
Yep.
So the program itself, let's talk about it, NERIS, right? If everybody's familiar with NFRS, obviously, right? I would say probably 90% of the fire service is probably reporting through NFRS, right? But this is the next step. right? This is the big brother now, right? I would say.
That's correct. Essentially, it is. There's a lot of things NERIS is. Probably the most important for people to understand it's the replacement for NFRS. NFRS goes away at the end of the year.
Right. And so now this is already live. January 1, it went live.
Correct. Yep. This is a transition year in which both systems are alive and well. And we're trying to kind of turn up the volume on NERIS, and at the same time, we're kind of turning down the volume on NFRS. Just today, the states of Kentucky and North Carolina, their chiefs received emails and credentials to get into the system. And so right now we have about 200 departments, including metropolitan departments to small departments to suburbs, that have already made the transition. Like once you go to the new system, you shut down and stop, submitting information into the old. And so we're exactly where we need to be. You'll see a pretty rapid crescendo at the end of the year, but it's fast paced.
And let me ask you, with the 200 departments that have already been online, and they were beta testing even before that, what's been the return? Like, I'd love to know, what's the feedback? What are you hearing? What are you getting?
I think what's cool is that firefighters are expert complainers.
Oh, no doubt.
Right?
No doubt.
And early on, we had the West Metro Fire District just outside of Denver, a metro-sized fire department just on the west side of Denver there. And they actually did some analysis because we told people we think it will take you a less amount of time to give us information in this new system. That report by report, if we can shave off 10 seconds here, a minute there, and they did some analysis, and they figured out with people who were unfamiliar with NERIS and had been using NFRS for a long time, it was already a wash almost on day one. Like it wasn't any more time. And in other departments down in, I think it was one in Texas, they found that it was saving 30 or 40% of the time, that they were able to chop off time. And so one of the things we found from departments is they were very responsive to a system that was designed for them. Like we did not embark on this project going, what do the brass need? What do the commissioners need? What we really said is, what is going to help us take care of our communities first and foremost, and by virtue of that, take care of our firefighters and our company officers, our district chiefs, battalion chiefs, kind of an inverted paradigm. And we're serious about it. Like this is a system that is built not for the fire service. We're building it with the fire service. And you could ask departments that have submitted ideas and questions, some of which we were able to incorporate in the first version. Once firefighters see it, they begin to understand that it's different. And firefighters get excited about things that, especially for those guys and gals that are into the job, they get excited to see a system that's working for them. Not a perfect system, right? It's not divinely inspired, but they see it and they understand it's run by humans who are fundamentally interested in taking care of them. And so our feedback has oftentimes been about expansion, asking things that maybe were not already. One of my favorite examples that is very timely is when we were, originally, before it had been launched, this is well over a year ago, we talked to the state of New York and talking to the state fire marshal's office there, and they said, well, in New York, it is important for us to collect information about violence against firefighters. They were doing a project, or maybe it was just a data point that was concerning to them, how oftentimes firefighters interacted on scenes in which they, were assaulted or threatened to be assaulted or worse. And they wanted that in New York. And of course, our response was, well, if it's good in New York, right? If that's really important in New York, it's actually probably important everywhere.
Right.
Fire doesn't care what state it's in. And these situations are relevant. And so we incorporated that. Like there's a way now that regardless of the call type, firefighters can say, yeah, I was on a medical run, I was on a car fire, a dumpster fire, a fire alarm, but this involved violence against, me as a firefighter or members of my company. That we can just know how often that occurs is a big step in the right direction. And you see it on the heels of what has happened out west.
Yeah.
And it just shows me, and I think it shows people that are tuning in, this is not business as usual in the fire service. We've got to have information to make good decisions, and we're working hard to make that a reality.
This episode's brought to you by Ease Alert Heart Smart Alerting Solutions. Have you ever been jolted awake by a blaring station alarm only to sprint out half asleep, heart pounding? That's that legacy fire station alerting system, and it's doing much more harm then good. So meet EaseAlert, the world's first heart-smart firefighting alerting system. Designed by firefighters, proven by science, their purpose-built alerting devices deliver vibration and visual alerts, shaving seconds off of turnout times while improving health for the first responder. EaseAlert isn't just about comfort, it's about safety. Firefighters are 14 times more likely to die from heart attacks during alarm responses than during non-emergency duties. EaseAlert's HeartSmart system slashes stress, improves performance safety, and allows you to be the best firefighter you can be, on duty and at home. From bunk alerts and wristbands to dispatching consoles, display boards, and firehouse lighting, every component is purpose-built by firefighters for firefighters. No more missed tones, no more startled response, just fast, smooth, safe alerts. Fire departments across the country, like Mission, Texas, and St. Augustine, Florida, report calmer crews and faster turnout times. And their chiefs even say that the system is battle-tested and firefighter approved. So are you ready to switch? Visit easealert.com and discover how silent alerting can save time, reduce stress, and improve safety for you, your crew, and your community. Visit easealert.com to learn more and tell them National Fire Radio sent you.
I think what was interesting too, and I want to double down on that, is that you said though too, with all the feedback you're getting from people, not every insight or opportunity to increase the request of data is entertained, right? So the violence against firefighters, yes, but we're not. I love what you're doing because the system that you have designed and what you've put forward is designed with the firefighter in mind. It's not coming from a third party that is out of touch with the fire service and it's some generic, reporting. It is understanding that the information going in has to be important, and it's important information that has to be accurate. And the only way to do that is to make sure that the software represents the best of the firefighters, meaning it's built for us. It's not burdening us with attention to detail and clicks here and little this and little that. It's designed for ease in use. You're talking about people are already using it at the same rate that they're using their legacy NFRS program.
Yep.
So it's firefighter friendly, which is super important, right? And it's designed to collect data that's important for everyone. And so if it's niche little data for here or there, it might be good for you on your local turf. But if it doesn't check all the boxes for nationally speaking, we're not going to keep asking you for more and more information, right?
Exactly. And we're partnering, right? This is really an example of fire service teamwork in its most finest way, in which you had well over 100 departments that participated in the beta testing, the version 1 testing, but it's also some of these technology partners. It's these big software companies that have been manufacturing, records management system software for NFRS that are migrating over to the new system, and they're with us. And,
yes.
And so, they have to get it right along with us as we're developing the blueprint. And you are exactly right. Like we care greatly that we can look any firefighter in the eye and say that we are doing everything we can to make sure we're taking care of them and their careers by collecting relevant data in a way that is as streamlined as possible, that doesn't burden them unnecessarily, because we just have to have that nimble nature of data collection and analytics in 2025. I mean, you look at lithium-ion batteries and kind of how that sprung. I mean, we've been fighting, batteries have caught fire for
Sure.
a while now, but when you have these kinds of emerging topics, like we need the ability to get that data pretty quick so that we can get research on it. And then that allows us to tell firefighters what they need to do from a tactical standpoint, policy standpoint, train them appropriately, equip them appropriately, staff them appropriately. And those things don't happen overnight. Like these are complex problems that require information with which to solve. And so it's cool to be able to look firefighters in the eye and just, I think they know when they see the system, they will know like it's better. It's modernized, and it's only going to continue to grow that way.
It's just, yeah. I mean, if you think about it, you're making it better for us. Period.
Period.
Right? It's finding that balance of taking data and information and putting it together and coupling it with real street smart experience, and you couple the two, and it allows for, I think, a better approach to 99.9% of what we do.
Yes, I think that is exactly right. I think you're on target there. It's very humbling to work on the project, to receive the feedback. I mean, and it's even, Jeremy, it's collecting information that you almost, you kind of scratch your head and go, we've never thought to collect this before. Like, if you ever had to do an exposure report on the old system where, you get fire in one house, maybe scorches up the house next to it, that was a pain. It was a pain.
Anything out of the regular run was a pain.
And enough that there was all these errors and you just never could get it right. The rules around mutual aid.
Just wanted the red to go away.
Just wanted the red to go away.
Yeah, that's it. I love that. That's my favorite line that you've said. Yeah.
And even things like, how many people do we rescue? Not just from fire, but from hazardous materials leaks, from incidents from non-EMS incidents involving entrapments and building collapses. Like, how many people does the fire service allow to go see their grandkids' soccer games, or allow them to go to college and live a life because of our intervention and our willingness to risk our lives? Clueless. This new system, that will no longer be the answer. Like, we will know how many civilians we rescue. We will know more about firefighters that suffer maydays and are rescued. And I think, I sometimes, because of my bias towards the system, maybe I certainly lean optimistic, but I think it's realistic that most firefighters who love this job will see those data points and go, yes, I don't have to be convinced of the relevance to my life and my profession, because I know we didn't collect this before. And so I think it's going to be pretty transformational for the business, especially as it grows roots.
Yeah. I think the other thing that should be said too, and we should really focus on this, is that it doesn't matter whether it's the smallest department or the most urban center, right? Like when you look at, and I remember you talking about the red dirt floors, right? Like, there are approximately 27,000 fire departments in the country, and they are all shapes and sizes. And you truly have departments that are neighbor helping neighbor, right? And nothing.
Absolutely.
And that's truly what it is. And then you have the biggest and most urban centers with large budgets and people, right? And so when you look at that, it's so hard to draw correlations between them, because you're like, how is this possible, right? And as a small town volunteer fire chief or a small town career chief, you can feel overwhelmed if you don't have the resources and the people and the layers of government and battalion chiefs, deputy chiefs, and all the different layers to help you do all the administration tasks and so on. From a smaller department, you could look at that and think that this is going to be a tremendous burden on you. When in fact, I want you to not look at it as a burden. I want you to look at it as something you want to be a part of. This is something that you want to include into your everyday. It will reward you. It will take care of you, because the data will help you make better decisions. It will support you, right? And so that's the one thing I want to make sure is that I want people to understand that this isn't a new program to be shoved down your throat. Like I think a lot of times the intimidation factor of the unknown, and probably some misnomers and mistruths about what this is and what it looks like, right? Until you actually get into it. I'm sure there's 1,000 people that are listening to this or have heard through their software companies, there's going to be updates and, it's going to be this, it's going to be that. And at the end of the day, we typically vilify the unknown. We need to actually go about it the other way. We need to be open-minded, and we need to look at, hey, this could be a great tool for us. We vilified thermal imaging cameras 30 years ago. Yeah. I remember the very first thermal imaging camera. They're too much money. Nobody's going to use them.
Too heavy.
They got left on the right. And now look at us, right? And same with SCBA 50 years ago, right? Like, and it trickles down, right? And so what I think is really important is, I can't stress enough like how important this program truly is. And I'm not saying that because you're sitting here. I'm kind of one of those traditionalists stuck in the way we've done it, right? I'm very protective of the fire service. I'm very protective of like the core principles and values of the fire service. And it's not often I get jacked up over something, right? Like, but I'm excited about this because I know after spending the day with you today and chatting previously, I can absolutely foresee the value that's going to come from this tool. And this is truly what it is. It's a piece of equipment. It's a tool, right?
100%.
And I think that that's what we need to do. I don't want people to look at this as like an additional burden to your everyday. We get it. You're taxed. You're tired. You're doing more with less. Like, we get that. And I say we just because we're together here, but like, I'm on board with this. Like,
Yeah.
I think it's a win for the fire service. And truthfully, it's only going to be as good as the information you put in. And so if you choose not to partake, or you don't prioritize it, or you don't make it something of importance for you or your people, well, then you're not going to benefit from this tool.
Yes. And you make a valid point earlier. Like, it's a non-mandatory tool. Sometimes I'll get folks that will say, they'll think it's mandatory.
Right.
They'll even, they'll want to be convinced to come to, like, why should I do NERIS? And I almost always, will flip that. Like, I don't understand why you wouldn't. Like, this is a system that is one of the things I will tell fire chiefs in particular when I visit with that audience is that, we're tasked with trying to help you answer those questions that today you can't. And if you don't want help in your job, knowing that we want to spread this all the way down, we want company officers that want to mean well and do good things in their first two areas. We want them to have information at their fingertips too. But fundamentally, it's a system where you've got a lot of folks working for you to help take care of you, to help make sure you understand risk and resource. And there's 1,000 dividends that this system's going to pay to departments that want to participate with good data. And it's just the right thing to do. I mean, you got 27,000 fire departments, and I know of none of them that don't understand the value of working together. That's why mutual aid is, never a foreign language in the fire service. And I think it's just a natural process with which departments will make this migration. Clearly, they're already doing it. Thousands more invited this today, and we're going to see the dividend not just locally, knowing that that's really where it matters, but it's also nationally. Like, to really understand the all hazards problem in the country, the good work that our firefighters do for fires and flooding and rescue calls and everything in between. There's just no version of this that we don't walk away in 5 years, 10 years with a much better and more comprehensive understanding about what the fabric of protection afforded to the country is by our nation's fire service. That's pretty cool.
It's very cool. No doubt. I remember a story you shared the first time we sat together when you were a fire chief, and you had an excited captain come to you looking for extrication equipment. Yeah. And that story stuck with me because it was one of those things that I mentioned it earlier, is like, where data can really help us is really understanding who we truly are and making that decision. Do we need an extra set of equipment? And is it a passion plea, or is it a factual plea for equipment? And when you break that down, the importance of understanding the data at your fingertips, I want you to talk about that a little bit, of how, once the data is collected, as the end user, as the fire chief or a deputy chief doing purchasing or budgetary requests, or a company officer that wants to see response times, turnout times, or whatever it is, right? All the multitude of data that we're collecting, how easy is it to get that information out of NERIS?
In one word, easy. But here's kind of the cool, there's a force multiplier here, right? Like, a lot of fire departments are going to use a third-party software system.
Yes.
Third-party software system, like, they're going to have some analytics that look a little different, feel a little different. NERIS is going to have, every department that participates in NERIS will have a node, a profile within the system that, whether you're using a third party or not, you'll have access to analytics that we have, dashboards. And here's where it gets cool, is that when a fire department on the West Coast wants to understand a certain component of its response or risk in a different way, and we build a solution to address that particular concern or question, well, that becomes consumable and available for the greater fire service. And that's just not exactly how it happens, especially on the national system today. And so we kind of grow together as a fire service. And part of NERIS is that we're asking a lot of not just response-related questions on an incident-by-incident basis, but NERIS is the definitive source of all fire departments. Like, we say we think there's about 27,000 fire departments because
We don't know.
We're clueless. we don't really know.
That's wild.
It's a close probably, but with NERIS, we're going to know not just how many fire departments there are, but where their stations are at, what resources are quartered there, what are the staffing levels, whether they're volunteer or career of those resources from a minimal standpoint, what services do they provide, their staffing model for their department, are they accredited, what's their ISO rating? Like we start to get really good information across the country about the composition and assembly of our departments. And that also helps us tell the story and helps us understand what kinds of information we need for these departments to consume, to help themselves, to make arguments, to work together better even.
Yeah, there's a lot here, but it seems overwhelming.
In a good way, hopefully.
Well, sure, right? But a lot of times it's, like I said, something new, kind of, it can not be received well. And I can't stress that enough, though, is that this needs to have an opportunity to be successful. And it really requires the buy-in. And I think instead of looking at it as something that is of a task or something more that needs to be done, you should want to be a part of this process. I think it'll be fun to see what the reception is. And I think what's going to happen is when you start seeing the positive feedback and the information starting to be populated into the system and you're starting to get some assistance. And I think for you guys, what would be great is success stories to come out of it, where, the buy-in, you've gotten buy-in from departments and what's been their return on this, investment, if you will, right? Third-party software, yes, across the board. A lot of them are implementing it. They should be. They know about it. But also there's an app, correct? So free from you guys as well, right? So if they're not, if a department out there doesn't have third-party software for other aspects of their firehouse culture and life, they can come right in through your own.
Yeah. So essentially every department will have access to their node in the system, their profile, and then departments that a lot of these are probably smaller in scale.
Yeah.
And you're able to turn on the ability to collect incidents. It's just on the internet, right? So it just runs off your phone. You can do it in the field. Yes. So there's no excuse not to participate. We're going to do everything we can to make sure that it's accessible to those departments that are, all volunteer, that are underfunded. We still want that data.
Sure.
They need their own data.
Sure.
And so, yes, it is a flexible and accessible system.
Yeah. And then what does rollout, Tom? What does that look like? So you mentioned it started in January 1. By the end of the year, NFRS is basically going by the wayside. It's not mandatory. You said it.
Correct.
However, there are some upsides being involved and so on. But the rollout, you mentioned 2 more states were invited, but I'm assuming it hasn't been introduced across the country. Explain that to me.
We debated a lot about the best way to roll this out. And we started early on in 2024 with small groups, beta testing groups. We launched version 1 in early November. And we've been slowly adding departments all throughout last year. Starting in January, we were able to take the system live to collect incident data. Our first department to come and stop reporting to NFRS and come over to NERIS was out of South Dakota, Pierre Rural, South Dakota, all volunteer department, and one by one we've had them come over. We're at, as I sit here today, we're at 200, including a metro-sized department, and you just see it ramp up all the time. Starting in May, what we've done is we're going FEMA region by FEMA region across the country for onboarding. It's not because the FEMA region necessarily is geographically targeted for some crazy reason. It just gave us bite-sized groupings of departments that as you send an initial email out to a point of contact at a department and they have issues or questions, it just allowed the team to have enough bandwidth to just manage those issues that you're going to have with something like this. And so we started with FEMA Region 2, New York and New Jersey. We started down in FEMA Region 4 after that, which is basically the southeast part of the United States, Florida and Georgia, the Carolinas. And different states have different agendas. You have some states who want to do things a little different. So we were a little delayed in North Carolina and Kentucky. Those came out today, even though June 1st was the target for those based on their FEMA region. And then in July this month, we're targeting FEMA Region 6, which is like Texas and Oklahoma, Arkansas, New Mexico, Louisiana. And so we're just going to go FEMA region by FEMA region each month, onboarding departments. However, we work for the fire departments, and where a department needs to, come over early, maybe they're switching software companies and they don't want to have to train twice. As long as the state doesn't have an issue with it, we'll take care of folks. We are vigilant to never forget that this is the fire services system, and as much as data is not always, the most engaging topic, it is the currency that's going to get stuff done.
Sure.
So we're just going to keep onboarding throughout 25, but at midnight, basically December 31st, NFRS will no longer accept incidents. From that point on, so no 2026 incidents will go into NFRS. And so departments need to be aggressive with paying attention to the project. If they don't understand, they need to reach out, right? We are easy to track down.
Tremendous resources available too, right?
Absolutely. We have a bunch of team members, and they're all powered by like lithium-ion batteries. So they're 24/365.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, that's kind of, you asked about feedback earlier. One of the more complimentary common items of feedback we get is we'll get folks who, because they're volunteer, right? 2/3 of the nation's fire service, and they'll write in at 8 o'clock on a Monday PM or Sunday at noon, and they're responded to, right? These people are not ignored. We make sure that they don't just feel like they get a timely response. In many instances, they would describe it as an instantaneous response or a phone call. And I think that this continues to build. So a lot of opportunity ahead with the onboarding, but we are on time and on target.
Yeah, and that's cool. I'm excited. I'm excited to see how it goes. I will tell you though, personally, there's not a tremendous amount of conversation about it that I'm seeing, right? Just out in the street. And I think that, I'm curious education wise, how you guys are getting the word out. Where can departments look for more information? Like, how do they understand what's required of them? How do they implement this? All of that. So maybe some resources available, educational pieces they can go find, and so on.
Love that. I think that the primary resource I would send anybody interested is to the NERIS website, neris.fsri.org. And there you have everything from very technical resources to user resources to videos. And those are coming out in rapid pace. Like we always, one of the, if you were to, to find some criticism of, I think, the NERIS rollout, one of it is the timeline.
Yeah.
Like we signed the contract in May of 2023. There's no work being done in May of 2020. That's just the contract. And we've got to get this thing done by the end of this year. And so when you look at that timeline to build a big national system, roll it out, develop training materials, and
it's not a lot of time.
No. And that's where the records management system platforms, those software vendors, they have been instrumental in it because they've kept up. They're doing their part. And if you go to that website, what I can promise you is you'll find a lot of technical resources there. You have links where you can go to the help desk. So if people just say, I don't even know where to look and I've got this question, they can get it answered. And that's what's really, I think, impactful. So it's kind of a one-stop shop for us. We do have social media accounts on LinkedIn and Instagram and Facebook that, people can utilize those to see what's going on and pay attention to some of the newsworthy events that are happening with NERIS. And then we have a website that's devoted just to onboarding. So if you have departments that are curious about what does that mean, how do I do it, when do I do it, it's just that same website, neris.fsri.org, and then it's just /onboarding, and they can get the latest and greatest there.
Yeah, and I would say this too: if you do have third-party software in your department, you're already using it, reach out to your software provider, find out what updates they have and how far along they are in helping you implement this, because it is coming right around the corner.
Absolutely.
It's here now.
Yeah, it's and we'll start to see it in great succession. I mean, we work with them and communicate with those RMS vendors regularly, and they're fast at work, and so they're pushing information, but nothing replaces departments with leadership that are paying attention. Like you got to lean in, and if you're confused or if you're frustrated or if you just don't understand, don't sit idle, right? Reach out, It doesn't. It's a complex system, but to understand what we're doing actually is not that tough.
Yeah, I like that. I want to ask you real quick about you a little bit, right? Because we've talked all about the program, the data, the importance of it all, and so on. But there is this getting to know you today, spending the day with you. You have this fire inside you. When we talk about this, you're doing it right now. You're smiling from ear to ear. You're a retired career fire chief. Yeah. If I remember correctly, it was 9 stations, I think it was. So it was a sizable department, right? But I look at from that to where you are today and the position you're in today, you're doing very much what a dynamic fire chief did on a smaller level, on a much larger level today. You have tremendous fire within you to succeed with this project and to see this through. Is it because you just believe so heavily in the importance of the data and what that can do for this job, and how maybe it's your way of leaving a larger impact by steering this ship?
Yeah, I don't know that I could say it better than you did. I think that I remember being a young fire chief and wanting to do good.
Yeah.
And wanting to make a difference. And there's ego. Like, there's nobody that promotes and gets in those positions without some level of ego.
Sure.
And so you don't just want to do good, you want to knock it out of the park. And I just remember the frustration with it was really the first time I was introduced to some of the problems that we're trying to tackle today. And when you start to realize that the fire service is constructed in such a manner that makes it very difficult to compare, to understand, then, for me, being able to work on this project, and essentially, I don't know that it would be in my job description, but it is in my brain that, I represent 1.2 million firefighters on the project. And so, and it's a job that I will always love and have always loved. And so I'm going to make sure I do it right. And so it's not lost on me the importance of the project in terms of impact to civilian life and property and all the wonderful things that are in our mission and vision statements. But what really invigorates me are 2 things. One is I love the fire service, right? I grew up on the fire department, literally, figuratively, and I love the work we do. The other thing that really invigorates me, and that I think people that might listen to this would value, is there's a lot of people working on the NERIS project, and most of them, they've never put on bunker gear. They've never, been awakened to, to go on a call or done anything that many would consider to be of a heroic nature. But they are so deeply committed to what we're doing. Like, they understand the power, the importance of the fire service. And these, software engineers and software architects and research scientists and data scientists that are looking at things to make NERIS better, more nimble, quicker, all those words that I use, like, they're as passionate about our business as we are. I know that's crazy to even think.
No, it actually makes a lot of sense to me, because typically a lot of people outside look at the fire service from the outside in, and they admire it with they hold us to such a high regard and esteem that for a civilian, if you will, to work on a project like that, they take tremendous pride and value in that. And so it makes sense. It absolutely makes sense.
They're inspiring.
Yeah.
I always tell, and I would tell anybody that listen to this, like, I look at NERIS as being on your roster. Like, we're not a system that you have to use that's a chore. We're trying to work for your department, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It does. Well, I thank you for sharing that. And you said something there that I think is so important, and I kind of talked about it there for a second, but I believe all of this, the way we make the fire service better is collaboration. Yeah. And the fire service is great. I believe that in my core, that the fire service is good. But sometimes we need an outside influence to kick us in the butt a little bit to wake up. And, and I think that's everywhere in life. And so to have so many people from different walks of life and not the fire service to work on this project holds us more accountable, right? And I love that. I absolutely love that, because that's how we push the fire service forward. You want to do better? Collaborate. Let your guard down. Let some people in and let's build something that's better. And I truly believe that in so many ways, not just in life, but in the fire service too, is when we collaborate and we work together and we bring in different resources and put them together in one room to create something that's good for the fire service, we're going to win. And I think that's where we are, Tom.
Spot on. And that's a reality. And I think this is a fine example of teamwork on a national scale. And I love exactly what you said.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I can't thank you enough for making the trip in today and spending
thanks for having me, brother.
Few minutes with me. I truly believe that this is something special and important. And I think in a time where innovation and technology truly has taken hold of so much of what we do every day, we need to make sure that the information that we can share across those mediums represent the very best of what this job stands for. And I think that's what you're doing. So, Tom, thank you, man. I appreciate you very much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, good. Thank you. Guys, thanks for tuning in for another episode of the National Fire Radio Podcast. A real treat to have Tom Jenkins here in the studio with me today. Do me a favor. Every time we talk about things that we're not super comfortable with, we usually put them to the back burner. I would challenge you, if you're listening, Tom's laughing over here. I would challenge you, if you're listening to this episode, go check out what NERIS is, what it looks like. We'll put the links in the comments below so you can see. You can go right to the website. Educate yourself. If your own software provider has not provided you with information or brought you up to speed, your mutual aid groups, your county, or the organizations that you work with haven't educated you, educate yourself and be the voice out there to push people forward. I think that the NERIS platform moving forward is going to be incredibly important in the long run for the fire service. And there's short-term rewards there too. And so I would challenge you to educate yourself and get on board, and don't look at it as a task, but look at it as something that you want to take pride in and make it a part of your everyday. So with that, like I say at the end of every podcast, take this conversation, take it back to the firehouse and talk about it, because when we're talking about the job, we're making the job better. Tom, thank you. Guys, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you at the next one. Jeremy, National Fire Radio.
National Fire Radio.